Welcome, dear dreamers. Tonight, journey with me to the ancient castle of Elarin, where shadows hide secrets and a forbidden garden holds whispers of the past. Let the tale of Princess Lysandra and the Midnight Rose guide you gently to a place of mystery and wonder. Now close your eyes, breathe deeply, and drift into a world of enchantment. The castle of Elarin had always been a place of shadows. Gilded halls and stately tapestries, draped in the rich hues of dusk, adorned its rooms. But they couldn't hide the murmurs that lingered in every corner. It was said that the stones themselves bore witness to the secrets of the realm. And of all the castle's mysteries, none were more elusive than the secrets kept in the Forbidden Garden. This garden lay just beyond the eastern wing, walled off by towering hedges that twisted like ancient sentinels, as if time itself had been woven into their thick, gnarled branches. Few dared speak of it openly, and fewer still remembered the day it had been closed off, as if it had always been meant to be hidden. Princess Lysandra, however, had known of it all her life, for it lay directly below her window, a place she could not see but could almost feel in her dreams. On her 18th birthday, as evening descended over Elarin, the castle grew still. Even the guards seemed to fall under some silent spell, their voices a low murmur, their torches flickering like whispers. The queen had retired early, casting only a single look toward her daughter, a look laden with unspoken words. Lysandra, though, felt no drowsiness. Instead, a strange yearning pulled at her heart, a sensation that grew with each passing hour. She knew it well. It was the call of the garden. As midnight neared, a soft, haunting fragrance drifted into her chamber, curling around her like a whisper. It was a scent she had never known, neither the roses of the queen's own gardens, nor the exotic perfumes imported from distant lands. This scent was older, deeper, and filled with a melancholy sweetness that struck her soul with an ache she could not name. Against every warning echoing in her mind, she rose, dressing in the quiet of night. Following the scent through the empty halls, her footsteps ghosted over marble floors as if afraid to be heard. Shadows danced along the stone walls, guiding her as she moved silently through the maze of corridors. When she reached the garden gates, she expected them to be bolted, locked tight as they had been every other night of her life. But to her astonishment, the iron doors stood ajar, as if inviting her in. She stepped into the garden, the air thick with a scent so rich it was almost a song. The moon hung low, draping the garden in a silvery haze, revealing statues and sculptures half shrouded in ivy, figures frozen mid-gesture, expressions lost to time. The path was wild, as though nature had taken it back, and yet strangely it felt familiar, as if the garden had been waiting for her. At the garden's center, under a canopy of dark, tangled branches, she saw it, a single rose. Black as the night itself, it gleamed beneath the moon, an unnatural, almost ethereal bloom. Its petals were edged in silver, catching the moonlight in soft waves that seemed to breathe with each movement of the night air. It was beautiful and terrible, a blossom born of shadows and secrets. Lysandra approached, her heart caught between fear and curiosity. She reached out, fingers brushing its petals, and felt the chill of its delicate edges. The rose seemed to tremble, almost as if alive, and a sensation washed over her, a feeling as old as the stones beneath her feet. She closed her eyes and inhaled, the fragrance enveloping her, intoxicating and strange. In that instant, the world shifted. Images flickered through her mind, whispers of the past breaking through the silence of the present. She saw faces, her mother's as a young woman, haunted and solemn, her father's, caught in an expression she had never known him to wear. Then, a stranger, a woman with eyes like winter, sharp and searching, a face as familiar as it was foreign. These visions spun around her, pulling her down, deeper and deeper, as if she was sinking into an ocean of memories that weren't her own. A voice, soft, distant, and achingly sad, seemed to echo through the garden, wrapping around her like the rose's petals. Only the scent of truth can reveal what's hidden. The voice faded, and the visions dissolved into shadows, leaving her alone once more in the moonlit garden. She opened her eyes trembling, the rose now dark and silent before her. Yet the mysteries it held lingered in her mind, sharper than any blade. Something had changed. She could feel it in her very bones, in the weight of the air around her. The midnight rose had shown her a glimpse, a taste of a truth buried in the soil of her family's past, a truth that she could not ignore. And as she turned from the garden, her heart heavy with questions, she knew one thing for certain: nothing would ever be the same. Morning light crept into Princess Lysandra's chamber, soft and unassuming, but it brought with it a disquiet that ran deep within her. The night before lingered like a dream, fragile and faint, yet the scent of that strange rose still clung to her, subtle and haunting. She tried to dismiss it, to convince herself it was merely a trick of the mind. But even as she dressed, the memory of that midnight garden pulled at her, as if tethered to her very soul. Throughout the day she wandered the castle, her gaze drifting to faces she thought she knew. Her mother, always composed, wore a look of quiet apprehension that Lysandra could see now, as though the queen was guarding some private grief. Her father, the king, glanced at her with the barest trace of something inscrutable in his eyes. Lysandra began to sense the shape of her family in a way she never had before, as though the midnight rose had unlocked a part of her sight, revealing them not as rulers, but as people burdened by hidden sorrows. As the evening approached, she felt drawn once again to the quiet of her chamber. There, as twilight deepened, the room grew cold. A gust of wind brushed over her face, carrying with it the faintest echo of that bittersweet scent. It was the perfume of the midnight rose, but it was not blooming in the garden this time. It was calling to her from within, like a seed planted in the shadows of her mind. That night, as the castle settled into its familiar hush, Lysandra sought out the castle's oldest advisor, the sage, a man with a face like aged parchment and eyes like weathered stone. His loyalty was to the royal line, not just to the current throne. She found him in the castle library, surrounded by volumes worn and ancient. And as she approached, he looked up, his eyes searching her with an almost knowing sadness. "I see you have found the garden," he murmured, voice as soft as the flickering candlelight. Lysandra's heart quickened at his words. "The rose," she replied, her voice barely a whisper. "The midnight rose. It showed me visions, people I have never met, memories I do not understand." The sage regarded her in silence for a long moment, the shadows around them stretching as if listening. At last he sighed, a sound that seemed to carry the weight of years. "There are things hidden from you, Your Highness, things buried beneath the roots of this kingdom. The midnight rose was planted by a woman your family tried to forget, a princess who bore the same blood as you but was denied her place on the throne. Betrayal is a poison, and she, in her anguish, sowed the seeds of truth into that rose, so that one day her story might be told." The words sank into Lysandra's heart, cold and sharp, but the sage continued, his voice steady and relentless. "Your great aunt, a princess who lived long before you, was once the rightful heir, or so she believed. But your ancestors, seeking a more powerful union, placed her aside, leaving her bitter and forgotten. She, in turn, cast a curse upon the family, a curse to reveal the lies that had stained the line. The midnight rose, princess, blooms only when the one destined to inherit these truths is ready." Lysandra felt a shiver run through her, as if the very air in the room had grown thin. The pieces of her visions, the woman's face, her mother's wary gaze, the sorrow in her father's eyes, fell into place like shards of broken glass. Her family's rule, it seemed, was built upon the remnants of hidden betrayal. "But why show me?" she asked, her voice a whisper caught between fear and sorrow. "Why reveal this to me?" The sage met her gaze, his eyes somber and deep. "Because you, Princess Lysandra, carry within you the power to break this curse or to let it fester. The midnight rose does not choose lightly. It has waited, watched for one whose heart could carry the truth. It is a burden that comes with the blood of the throne. And now, it is yours." The room seemed to close in around her as the words settled into her bones. She felt like a stranger in her own skin, weighed down by the secrets of a past she had never known. As she left the sage, her steps heavy, she thought of the garden, of the rose that waited for her still hidden in the night. That night, Lysandra lay awake in her bed, the moon casting silver shadows over her face. She closed her eyes, yet sleep refused her. The truth of her family's legacy had been revealed, and she knew now that the midnight rose was no ordinary flower. It had bloomed for her, calling her to bear witness to the ghosts of the past. And yet, as the first light of dawn touched the castle walls, she realized the midnight rose's revelation was only the beginning. The secrets it had unveiled were not simply memories. They were living shadows, pressing upon her to make a choice. She was no longer just a princess. She was now the keeper of her family's buried truths. With dawn, her destiny lay clear before her. The midnight rose had shown her the past, but she knew it now awaited her return, its petals holding the promise of a trial still unspoken. A journey that could bring her family to ruin or redemption. The days that followed were heavy with the weight of unspoken words. Lysandra moved through the castle as if in a dream, yet each step was shadowed by the knowledge she now carried, a burden pressing down on her shoulders. The castle seemed different, colder, as though it sensed the truths that had surfaced, truths that hung between her and her family like cobwebs in a darkened room. Her mother, the queen, watched her with an intensity that bordered on fear. The queen's eyes, once soft and maternal, had hardened, clouded by something that Lysandra could not fully understand. It was as if her mother knew she had ventured into forbidden territory and sensed the questions that now lived within her. Lysandra tried to speak to her, to ask about the princess who had been cast aside, but the queen deflected, her gaze sharp, her tone unyielding. "Some things, Lysandra," she had said, "are better left to the past." But Lysandra could not leave it in the past. She could no longer ignore the knowledge that had unfurled within her, growing like the thorns of the midnight rose. The images the rose had shown her, of her family's choices and the betrayed princess, haunted her every moment. The sage's words lingered, urging her forward, whispering of a curse, of truths buried in the soil of her bloodline. In her search for answers, she found herself descending into the castle's crypts, a labyrinthine maze of stone and shadows hidden beneath the grand halls. These crypts held the remains of her ancestors, generations of kings and queens lying in silence, their legacies chiseled into cold marble. Yet among them, there was no sign of the betrayed princess, no marker to honor her memory. It was as if she had been erased, her existence a shadow among the stones. Deeper into the crypts, Lysandra came upon a doorway draped in vines and dust. a forgotten threshold that seemed to call to her, pulling her forward. Together, they would confront the final vestiges of despair and usher in a new beginning, one rooted in love, remembrance, and the promise of redemption. The air hummed with anticipation as Elric and Eldor traversed the shimmering path forged from the light of reclaimed memories. The shadows that had once clung so desperately to the giant began to retreat, flickering like candles caught in a sudden breeze. The landscape shifted around them, an ebb and flow of color and light that mirrored the awakening of Eldor's heart. Each step forward brought forth a new wave of warmth, illuminating the dark recesses that had long been shrouded in grief. As they journeyed, Aelric felt the heartbeat of the dreamscape synchronizing with the pulse of Eldor's spirit, a resonance that reverberated through his very being. Together, they delved deeper into the giant's essence, ready to confront the final vestiges of despair that still clung to him like tendrils of smoke. Elric knew that the true test awaited them. The moment of reckoning when Eldor would emerge, not just as a protector, but as a being reborn. A giant whose heart brimmed with love rather than isolation. They arrived at a vast expanse, an open meadow drenched in the golden hues of twilight. The sky above shimmered with swirling constellations, a celestial dance of hope and possibility. In the center of the meadow lay a colossal stone, engraved with symbols of ancient lore, resonating with a power that was palpable. This was the Heartstone, a relic of the giants that pulsed with energy, an anchor that connected Eldor to the very fabric of the realm. Elric stepped closer, his heart racing. This is where it all began, Eldor. This is where you can reclaim your essence. He turned to face the giant, determination blazing in his eyes. You must embrace who you are, your love, your pain, your power. Only then can you awaken and reclaim your place in this world. Eldor hesitated, shadows still flickering at the edges of his consciousness. What if I awaken in fury? What if the darkness within me overwhelms the light? Elric reached out, his fingers brushing against the cool stone of the Heartstone. You have faced your fears, Eldor. You have walked through the valleys of sorrow and emerged stronger. You are not alone. I stand with you. As the prince's words sank in, Eldor inhaled deeply, a shudder coursing through his colossal frame. He stepped forward, placing his massive hand upon the Heartstone. The symbols glowed with an otherworldly light, pulsating in rhythm with the giant's heartbeat. The air crackled with energy, and Aelric felt the very ground tremble beneath them. In that moment, the memories they had unearthed surged around them. Laughter, joy, and love woven into a tapestry of light. Eldor closed his eyes, allowing himself to feel the warmth of those moments, the embrace of the villagers, the laughter of children. It surged through him like a river breaking free from winter's grip. thawing the icy tendrils of despair that had long held him captive. "I remember," Eldor breathed, his voice resonating with newfound strength. "I remember the love that once filled my heart, the joy of being part of something greater than myself." The shadows began to dissipate, scattering like mist before the sun, and in their place a light emerged, soft and radiant, expanding outward in waves. Aelric shielded his eyes, the brilliance overwhelming yet comforting. A promise of rebirth. Eldor's form began to shimmer, the light infusing him with warmth and vitality. He was becoming more than just a giant. He was becoming the embodiment of the love he had nurtured for so long, a guardian reborn. "Eldor, let the light guide you," Aelric urged, his heart pounding with anticipation. "Awaken and let your spirit soar." With a roar that shook the heavens, Eldor unleashed a surge of energy that enveloped them both, the very fabric of the dreamscape shimmering with brilliance. The shadows retreated entirely, banished by the radiance that pulsed from the Heartstone, a beacon of hope that illuminated the meadow. The ground beneath them resonated, a symphony of light and sound that reverberated through the air. In that moment of awakening, Eldor's eyes opened wide, glowing with a brilliance that rivaled the stars. "I am no longer a monster," he declared, his voice now a harmonious blend of strength and gentleness. "I am Eldor, protector of Eldoria, and my heart is a vessel of love." As the echoes of his proclamation faded, the world around them transformed. The meadow flourished, wildflowers blooming with vibrant hues, the air sweet with the scent of renewal. Eldoria, once shrouded in darkness, basked in the glow of a new dawn. Aelric felt a surge of joy ripple through him as he watched the transformation unfold. The promise of a brighter future unfurling like the petals of a blossoming flower. But Eldor was not yet finished. The air grew thick as she entered, and a sense of foreboding washed over her. Here, in this secret chamber, she found what she had been seeking. In the center of the room, on a pedestal worn and cracked, lay a single object. A silver locket, tarnished by years, yet strangely untouched by the decay around it. She picked it up, and the chill of the metal bit into her skin. As she opened the locket, she saw a tiny portrait, painted with delicate strokes. It was the face from her visions. The woman, with eyes as sharp as winter. Her expression fierce and sorrowful. For a moment, Lysandra felt as if she was staring into a mirror that showed her not her own reflection, but a reflection of the legacy she had inherited. She felt the weight of the locket, the chill of its memory, and knew in her heart that this was all that remained of the princess who had been forgotten. In that dim chamber, the truth unfurled around her like the petals of the midnight rose. Her family had rewritten history, casting aside one of their own to preserve their vision of the throne. The princess, stripped of her title and her future, had cursed them with the very thing they sought to escape, the unending shadow of truth. The midnight rose was her revenge, a bloom that would wait through generations, silent and patient, until a daughter of her bloodline was ready to hear its story. Lysandra's heart ached with the injustice, the quiet cruelty that had shaped her family's rule. She had been raised to believe in the legacy of their power, in the rightness of her line. But now she saw it all for what it was. A fragile veil of lies, woven to protect them from a truth that could shatter their carefully built kingdom. With the locket held tightly in her hand, she rose, determination hardening within her. She could no longer turn away, nor could she remain silent in the face of what she had uncovered. Her family's betrayal had left a scar not only on their bloodline, but on the very kingdom they ruled. And as long as that scar festered, there could be no peace for any of them. The truth had been revealed, and now it demanded justice. As Lysandra left the crypts, the air around her felt different, thick with the weight of her purpose. She had seen the cost of her family's choices, had felt the pain of the forgotten princess, and she knew that to break the curse, she would have to bring these secrets to light, to cast them from the shadows once and for all. But as she ascended back into the castle's cold corridors, she knew this would not be a task for one woman alone. The midnight rose had chosen her to carry the truth, but now she would need allies to bear its burden, those willing to face the consequences of unveiling the past. For the path ahead was fraught with danger, and the trials that awaited would demand more than courage. They would demand loyalty, sacrifice, and an unwavering commitment to the truth. And so, with the locket cold against her skin, Lysandra steeled herself for what lay ahead. The midnight rose had shown her the past, but it was her task to ensure its light could no longer be hidden. The days grew heavy with a sense of anticipation as Lysandra carried her knowledge like a hidden flame, its light casting shadows that threatened to consume everything she once believed. The kingdom around her continued in its daily rhythm, unaware of the quiet storm gathering within its walls. Yet for Lysandra, nothing felt familiar. Each room she entered seemed charged with secrets, and every glance she received hinted at silent judgments, as if those around her sensed the transformation she had undergone. She had tried in vain to speak to her mother again, to unearth the pieces of the past still concealed within the queen's heart. But her mother had only looked at her with that same steely gaze, warning her with silence and guarded words. "Leave the past where it belongs," the queen had said, her voice as cold as winter's breath. "You do not know what it may cost." But Lysandra did know. She knew it would cost her everything if she let these secrets remain in darkness. The midnight rose had revealed a story of betrayal, yet it was not simply a tale of an ancient wrong. It was a curse that had bound her family and the kingdom to a fate of perpetual secrecy and mistrust. Her ancestors' decision to forsake the princess, to erase her from memory, had left scars that ran through the very roots of their rule, scars that could only be healed if they were acknowledged. And so, she prepared herself for the trials that awaited, for she knew that breaking the curse required more than knowledge. It required action. Under cover of night, she gathered those few whom she trusted, friends and advisors she knew would stand beside her regardless of the risks. Among them was the sage, the old advisor who had revealed the story of her great aunt. His loyalty unwavering even as he looked upon her with eyes full of sorrow. With them, she shared the truth of her discovery, her voice steady, but her heart thrumming with fear as she spoke of the cursed bloodline, the hidden princess, and the midnight rose that had chosen her to bear witness. There is a darkness within our family's past, she told them, her voice low, and it festers like a poison within us, twisting our legacy into something false. This kingdom cannot flourish if it is built on lies. To bring peace, we must face the truth, no matter the cost. Her friends listened in silence, the weight of her words sinking into the shadows around them. Some looked at her with worry, others with admiration, but none with the certainty she hoped to find. At last, one of her closest friends, a young knight named Elarin, spoke up. "If you bring this truth into the light, Your Highness," Elarin said quietly, "it may not only destroy your family's honor, but shake the trust of every person in this kingdom. Are you prepared for what that may mean, for the fractures it may cause?" Lysandra's heart trembled, but her resolve did not waver. She met Elara's gaze, her voice strong, her eyes unflinching. "I am," she replied. "A legacy built on lies can never truly endure. If this kingdom is to survive, it must be founded on truth, no matter how painful." With those words, Lysandra and her allies began a journey, one that took them from the castle's ancient corridors to the far reaches of the kingdom, meeting with elders and families who held fragments of stories long suppressed. The tales were varied and scattered, pieces of a puzzle that had been shattered through the years. Yet together, they painted a picture of a kingdom haunted by the silence of its rulers. Each encounter felt like a trial, a test of her courage to bear the truth. Some met her revelations with anger, voices raised in indignation, accusing her family of betrayal. Others fell silent, eyes cast down, as if the weight of the knowledge was too heavy to bear. Yet, in each village, each town, Lysandra's message was clear. She sought to bring forth the truth, to cleanse the legacy of her family, so that her people might finally find peace. As the days passed, whispers spread across the kingdom. Rumors of a princess who defied the very foundations of her family's rule. Some feared her, some praised her. but all were drawn to the notion of a ruler willing to confront the shadows of the past. And as the rumors grew, so did the tension within the castle walls. One evening, Lysandra's mother summoned her. Her face pale, her expression a mixture of anger and something deeper, perhaps fear. "Do you know what you are doing, Lysandra?" the queen asked, her voice taut. "By unearthing these ghosts, you risk destroying everything we have worked to build." Lysandra met her mother's gaze, her heart steady despite the tumult within. "What we have built, Mother, was always at risk of being destroyed, for it was built on falsehoods. If we are to have a future, it must be a future free from these shadows." The queen said nothing, her silence more telling than any words she could have spoken. And as Lysandra turned to leave, she saw something flicker in her mother's eyes, a hint of the burden she herself had once carried, a shadow of the curse that had long held their family captive. That night, as Lysandra stood once more in the garden under a sky streaked with starlight, she felt the weight of her journey settle upon her. The midnight rose had guided her through trials of truth, had shown her that the price of freedom was often paid in sacrifice. She knew now that her choice had set a fire within her family, one that could not be extinguished until every secret had burned away. The final trial was upon her, and in her heart she knew that the midnight rose would not let her rest until the curse was broken and the truth had finally taken root. The night of reckoning came draped in shadows, a quiet too deep for comfort settling over the castle. Lysandra felt it in her bones, an unease that echoed the finality of what was to come. The midnight rose had called her, guiding her to the edge of her family's secrets, and now stood waiting in the moonlit garden, its petals trembling as if it, too, sensed the weight of the truth about to unfold. With her allies by her side, Lysandra walked through the darkened halls, her footsteps a solemn echo in the silence. She had summoned her family and the court, gathering them in the garden as witnesses to the reckoning. Her heart thundered as she entered the garden's heart, where the midnight rose gleamed under the moon, a flower forged from shadows, now radiant and waiting, holding the final truth within its thorned grasp. The queen and king stood before her, their expressions drawn tight, cloaked in the restraint of rulers who had spent a lifetime hiding from this very moment. Lysandra met her mother's eyes, seeing there the reflection of her own face, a mirror of strength, fear, and 1,000 silent questions. "Why must you do this?" her mother whispered, her voice like brittle glass. "What purpose can this serve, Lysandra? Our family has survived for generations. This truth, this curse, need not be spoken." But Lysandra's voice was steady as she replied, her words carrying a conviction born from days spent in the shadows of lies. "Mother, survival at the cost of truth is no legacy I wish to inherit. We cannot rule a kingdom built upon deception. This kingdom deserves to know the foundation upon which it stands. The queen fell silent, her face drawn, while the king remained stoic, his gaze fixed on the midnight rose, as if unable to look his daughter in the eye. Lysandra took a step forward, her hand reaching for the rose's stem, its thorns biting into her palm. She winced, but she did not release it. This rose had bloomed for her, chosen her to carry the weight of a legacy too long hidden in darkness. As her blood touched the rose, it seemed to pulse, each petal catching the moonlight, glowing brighter, its silver edges shining like embers in the night. The garden held its breath, as if all of nature waited for her next words. "In the name of the midnight rose," she declared, her voice carrying through the still air, "I call upon the truth that has bound our family. Let this curse be broken. Let the shadows release their hold." A sudden wind tore through the garden, howling like a creature awakened from a long sleep, and the midnight rose's petals began to fall one by one, drifting to the ground in silver ashes. And with each fallen petal, the visions began to spill forth, not only to Lysandra, but to all gathered there. The faces of her ancestors flickered through the garden like apparitions, showing the betrayal that had ignited the curse the forgotten princess cast aside, her fury burning in her eyes as she bound the truth to the rose. Lysandra's family and court watched in horrified silence as the truth played out before them, each memory as vivid as if it were happening anew. The air grew thick with the weight of centuries, the bitterness of the wronged princess seeping through each fallen petal, each whispered accusation. And then, as the final petal drifted to the earth, silence fell, profound and complete. Lysandra released the stem, her hand bloodied but her heart strangely light. She turned to her parents, to the court, to the people who had long followed their rule without question. She could see the disbelief in their eyes, the dawning horror and understanding. And then slowly her mother, the queen, stepped forward. "You have done what I never could, Lysandra," she said, her voice a mixture of sorrow and respect. "You have brought light to a truth I was too afraid to face, and for that, you are more fit to rule than I ever was." The words were a balm to Lysandra's heart, though they brought no joy, only a deep and solemn understanding. Her mother too had borne the weight of the curse, had lived in fear of the truth she could not face. But now, as dawn began to break over the garden, Lysandra felt the curse lifting, the shadows receding with the light. The midnight rose, now only a stem with fallen petals scattered at its base, had fulfilled its purpose. The curse that had bound her family had been laid to rest, and Lysandra knew that her kingdom could now begin to heal. As the first rays of sunlight touched the garden, Lysandra turned to the court, her voice calm yet unyielding. "Today marks a new beginning for Elarin. From this day forward, we will rule with truth and transparency, honoring the past but not repeating its mistakes, the midnight rose has shown us the way. The people knelt before her, not as subjects bowing to a ruler, but as citizens choosing to follow a queen who had bared her heart and her family's shame for their sake. Lysandra felt a peace settle within her, a quiet certainty that she had done what was right. And as the garden filled with the soft light of dawn, she knew that the midnight rose had not withered in vain. It had brought her family's truth into the light, allowing them to begin anew, unbound by the shadows that had once held them captive. Thus, Princess Lysandra, now Queen Lysandra, stood among the petals of the midnight rose, knowing that she had woven a legacy of truth from the darkness of betrayal, a legacy that would guide her kingdom forward into the light.